Bartholomew preached in several countries, and having translated the Gospel of Matthew into the language of India, he propagated it into that country. He was at length cruelly beaten, and then crucified by the impatient idolaters.
Welcome to Martyr's Row.
Welcome. We're getting really good at the snaps. By
I
the way.
know. The funny thing is like I think people are like, okay, we don't need anticipation for the snap. We probably don't need to count it down every time.
But it's kind of fun that we do.
I know, that's true. It's fun for us.
Yeah. I love because sometimes you'll do it and I'm not ready.
I know.
And so I'm like,
I can see you
I gotta
scrambling.
like.
Yeah. Well, I like that though. So we solved that.
We solved it.
That was easy.
So Bartholomew.
Okay. Good name. Lots of syllables.
It is a good name.
Yeah. Lots of vowels.
Which is
You'd have to buy a
tough
lot
because
for that
when
one.
you hear the name Bart,
Oh yeah, I wouldn't think.
I usually think
Bartholomew.
of Simpson.
Sure. Is Bart?
But I don't think of like a saint.
Right.
Because he's the opposite. Saint Bart. Or they call him Art. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Is that what Bart is short for? Bartholomew?
I would assume.
So Bart Simpson is Bartholomew Simpson? Has anyone ever said that?
I don't know. And I'm just assuming it's short for it.
I mean, that's wild. But I'm
Kind of a weird thought.
That would be a whole different like side cartoon. Bartholomew's.
It's actually just the complete opposite of Bart. It's like if he was actually a saint.
I'm here for that.
That would be kind of interesting.
It would clean the show up a
Anti-Simpsons.
little bit.
Yeah, that's true. Little less chaos.
Their predictions would become prophecy.
It's unfortunately the show ends with him just being brutally murdered.
Oh yeah, good point.
So that's a little bit of a downside.
It is funny that John Foxy writes basically like, and then eventually he gets crucified.
Yeah,
It's like
they've just cruelly beating him is what he writes. Yeah.
Man.
Well, the one thing that really sticks out to me in that when I read it every single time for some reason is impatient idolaters.
Oh yeah.
The fact that he specifies that
Yeah.
is like, no, like they just wanted him dead so quickly.
Yeah.
It's like they were beating him and they're like, he's not dying quick enough. You know, it's like that image in my brain is just so interesting.
But what were they? Is that what they were impatient about?
It doesn't really say. That's just
Okay.
kind of how I interpret it. You know,
Yeah, because it could be that like they're actually just impatient with their gods.
yeah, like
and
they're
so they
not
took it
judging
out
him.
on him.
Yeah, yeah, that could be.
Yeah. Or like
I feel like it's not clear on how it's written. It's not clear like why it qualifies them that way.
it's probably just the simplest thing.
Yeah, maybe it probably is that obvious.
Yeah, but it would be interesting that it's like, because he says impatient idolaters, that it's like they were impatient with their gods, and Bartholomew's god was like doing what he asked him to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't know the situation. I'm not sure that Bartholomew's like, hey God, do this. You know, I don't think it's like a 10 plagues thing.
Yeah, that's fair.
But even in that instance, it's not really Moses being like, God, do this.
Yeah.
It's God being like, hey, I'm
going
gonna
to
do
this.
this. Yeah. So,
And you have one job.
yeah, just to clarify.
Yeah, well, so because I think why that stands out to me so much as well is because it shows through now. He's what, number 11 that of the martyrs that we've read so far.
11. So 1, yeah, no, yeah, 11.
I think 11. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about that to me is
12.
no, because
Wasn't 10 the episode where
that was Paul.
Yeah. So, and then Jude was last episode.
Oh, you're right. He is 12.
So this is 12.
This is 12. Sorry, Jude.
That's stuck in my brain though, because if this is your first episode, go back to the song segment, which we haven't done yet in this episode. So
Yeah.
if this is your first episode, we're about to go into a songwriting
Welcome. You should
segment.
listen to this episode at least 3 times
Yeah,
to
and then
really
go,
get a feel for it.
yeah.
And then go back
Yeah.
and listen to
Episodes 1 through 11,
at least half a dozen times.
or 1 through 12.
Just to really make sure you can digest the content well.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you'll be caught up with us.
Yeah.
But episode, now I'm like, because the
So
way
this-
that the martyrs land,
So if he's number 12,
then this is episode
13. Yeah.
So episode 11 then, Martyr 10.
Yeah. That's Paul.
So episode 11, go back and listen to that song.
Yes.
Because boy, is it wild.
It's the most unhinged one we've had, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that disqualifies us for sainthood or not.
Probably. I mean, I'm sure there's many other
There's
things.
other things too. Yeah, good point. Yeah, we have to
But-
be Catholic first at least.
Yeah.
Gotta start there.
That's true.
Like not even
I just want to
start
get
with-
into I want to get in those archives.
Yeah.
Make
I
me the
know,
Pope so I
that's
can
the-
read those archives.
Make me the Pope.
Yeah.
Isn't the
Can't
well,
someone do that? They say it's God, but
I mean, I just feel like, man, yeah, that's not even a place that you can like sneak into.
no.
Because I feel like even in D.C., like you can kind of walk into the Library of Congress. It's not like
You could roam around. You could get
Yeah.
in trouble.
you can roam around.
Nice. Speaking of Vatican City.
But Vatican City is like, man, I mean, that place is wild.
Yeah, it's Fort Knox. Well, better than that.
Yeah. Aren't there only like 3 sovereign countries in the world that are like fully sovereign? Have we talked about this?
No.
Okay. Because one of them is Vatican City,
Yeah.
where
Which
it's fully sovereign. Like it's not a part or associated
it's
with
actually
anything.
completely disassociated. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's just in the middle of a country.
Oh, right.
It's just like, no, this area within your country is ours.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Which goes to some other interesting ideas.
Yeah.
But no, so
Another episode. Stay tuned for future episodes of Martyrs Row
leave a comment if that's what you want to hear
about
about.
Vatican City and the archives.
Yes. I want to read them so bad.
I want to read them
I want to read those books.
Give me those books. It'll take me decades. I want to spend the rest of my life in
I
Vatican
want to
City.
read those books.
This is only funny to us.
It's so true. Well, especially because I'll actually get there and they'll be in a language I don't understand.
I know. And it's like, it's just cool. Like, that's one of those things where it's like, why even guard them at this point? It's like, we don't know what's going
Yeah,
on.
we can't read them.
No. You guys here are the only people that can.
I have trouble reading English. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to be able to read that.
Yeah. But to be fair, it's like keeping that stuff protected so it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Which we should do an
Yeah.
episode on Library of Alexandria.
Oh, that's a fascinating one.
Yeah, just because like I used to think
Well,
it was
even
like
the idea of Alexander the Great is fascinating, and just
Yes.
who he is as an individual.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially because like to be honest, I feel like I learned about the Library of Alexandria before I ever even knew that it was like Alexander the Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That like he commissioned that,
Yeah.
and that like
Those are like disconnected in my brain for some reason.
yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah.
But then it
His
also,
name's right there.
I know. Come on, it's right there, Paul. I don't know, but
Well,
but that is
it's technically the female version of his name. So.
yeah, good point. Good point. He named it after his wife. His
That's
wife's
weird.
name is Alexandria.
That's a narcissist right there.
Yeah, it would be. He made every woman he married, because he definitely was married to more than one woman.
Yeah, probably.
Had to be.
Yeah.
Had to be.
A lot of course. A lot of those guys, they're like one's not enough.
Yeah. Drop it in the comments, all of his wives' names. And I'll give you a hint. He made everybody change their name to Alexandria. Every wife he married.
You could name all of them in one go.
Yeah. And it's like Alexandria the wife.
The wife. The wife the second.
No, he didn't even distinguish them. This is a total
It's
tangent.
a complete tangent.
But the thing is like Alexandria, the Library of Alexandria. I used to just think like, oh man, it's terrible that like that was destroyed because of it was ransacked and Rome's
Yeah.
overthrown and all of that stuff, and it was like they lost so much knowledge and like all of the ancient text and everything was there. And I used to think, like, why would they do that? Now I'm like, I actually think it was
We weren't
probably
supposed
a
to
good-
have that.
Yeah, that's the. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, okay.
Because there's been a lot of information that's been burned and
Yeah.
destroyed over the years because it's stuff that we're not supposed to know
Right.
or we shouldn't have access to.
And that's a hard thing for particularly Americans
Yeah.
to be like, hey, there actually is information we shouldn't have that we're
Yeah.
not supposed to have.
So it's like, I want all of it.
I.e., like, if you're a person that's like, what do you mean you shouldn't have, like, i.e., the tree of the
Yeah.
knowledge of good and evil,
There's things we're not supposed to know.
not supposed to know stuff.
Yeah.
And the
That's
thing
true.
is, like, of course, like, we even talked about this, like when people ask a question, or if I have a question, like, I want to explore the thought
Yeah.
because I don't want it to, like, take up all the room in my brain. But if I'm not supposed to know something, then, like, I still want to know it.
Yeah.
However, please don't tell me.
I'm curious, but don't tell me.
Yeah.
No matter what I say,
And it would be,
don't do it.
and to be fair, it would be much better if I had no idea that that knowledge existed.
Yeah.
That would be far easier,
Yeah.
right? And maybe that's the whole thing is like the temptation of the knowledge itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the temptation, I mean, even in, like, yeah. We're like getting into
We're
it.
going way into
Like,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
I should say, and I'm
Cut me off, Paul. Because
well,
that's an
because
episode.
I want to finish the thought I started because someone recently made fun of me for not doing that.
Okay.
And it's like, I'm sorry, I have a squirrel brain, and then I find a tangent, and then I forget the original path I was trying to go down.
Somebody in the comment remind us to do an episode on Alexander the Great
Yes, please.
and why we shouldn't have that knowledge.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
What was I talking about in the beginning? We were talking about martyrs.
Yeah,
As
Bartholomew.
we often do on this.
Bartholomew
Oh,
Simpson.
I remember now. Yes, Bartholomew Simpson.
Yes.
Well,
Saint
so
Bartholomew Simpson.
I think here's what's fascinating to me and why the term or the qualifier impatient idolaters
Oh yeah. Okay.
is so
I
it
wasn't
sticks
with you
out
yet.
so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think why that sticks out to me so much is the fact that like I've said, we've done a number of martyrs so far, and there's plenty more to go.
Yeah.
And it's that people were so furious by what they were doing that like it wasn't enough just to kill them or enough just to like persecute them or torture them. It's
Yeah.
like,
Good point.
no, it's like they actually like brutally murdered these people.
Yeah.
They treated them so horribly. It's like because they hated what they were doing so much, and I think that's something that is disconnected for me when I think of my own faith, where it's like, well, what had to happen for me to get here, to be able to we can publicly record and produce a
good
show
point.
talking about something people died for,
Yeah.
and not just like, oh yeah, someone went and shot him or stabbed him. It's like, no, they like
Right.
hoisted them up on stakes and burned them alive.
Yeah.
Or
You're
yeah.
making me think of something. I'm looking it up.
Oh yeah. So I think that's the thing that I find interesting, and it grounds me every time we read from Fox's Book of Martyrs. And it's that like these people sacrificed a lot for us to be able to be where we are right now.
Yeah, for sure. It actually made me think of this. John 15:18 through 25. If the world hates you, this is Jesus speaking, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belonged to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. As it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason. That's like...
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's cool, like,
Yeah.
when you get to a truth and you go, oh, wait, that Jesus said that.
He already said that.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of nice.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh, I did have that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, like, that is a crazy thing to think about, because it is one of those things where it's like, as you're saying that, I'm reminded that Jesus bore our stripes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, he wasn't just crucified.
Right.
He was whipped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was bruised for our transgressions, or bruised for our iniquities.
Well, I mean, think about it's easy to walk through all the things that happened to him. It's not easy to talk about.
Sure.
Because it is horrible.
Yeah.
And to think like that same horrid stuff was happening, similar horrid things were happening to the people that said, yeah, see that guy over here, I follow him, and I'm going to teach the gospel that he preached and lived out.
Yeah. So then what we see through the reading of how these martyrs died is essentially the outcome of what Jesus says in John, which is the way they hated me, they're going to hate you too.
And we see that play out.
Yeah.
And I think it's very telling how grotesque it was.
Right.
Even when we see historians like Josephus, who has accounts writing about this time in the martyrs.
Yeah.
And he even says he hated Christians.
Yeah.
And he even says, yeah, it went a little far.
Right.
Like, it was a little bit rough.
Yeah.
Where it's like, even him who didn't like it was like, this was a little much.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like there were probably a lot of people that said that.
I think so, yeah.
But in that way, it's like you don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but powers and principalities. It's that language of going in and going, man, when the enemy comes upon Judas to do the work that Judas does in order for Christ to be taken into custody, and ultimately, it's not Judas pushing in, it's the Spirit upon Judas pushing in. It's the Spirit upon these people that hate.
Yeah.
The person is allowing themselves to be controlled by a deeper hatred than even they can potentially possess themselves.
Yeah.
So you kind of see this like possession of, it's like, you know, and that is kind of a tough thing to talk about. It's like it is tough. When there is, even when you see fighting and stuff, people talk about like blacking out, and they don't realize how much it's like at some point, like we weren't meant to brutalize the human body.
Right.
We weren't meant to brutalize one another. And so when that happens, if you give yourself to that, something takes over you and pushes it further. Yeah. Because the way that Jesus was hated, they'll hate those that follow him as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's kind of a scary thing to think about.
And I think it's important to say here, because I think the message that can be heard sometimes with stuff like this is, well, my faith isn't as strong as theirs, or I feel invalidated because I haven't been tested the way they have. And it's like, well, yeah, like they went that far, but I struggle to even say something to offend somebody that's truth. Sure. And I think that's the wrong message, the wrong takeaway. Okay. And I think the reason I say that is because I think, well, on one hand, it is important for us to we should be bold for our faith. Yeah. Don't be a jerk. Right. But you should be bold and stand firm in what you believe in. But also, I think we should be proud of the fact that, and rejoice in the fact that they went through all the people throughout time that died for Christianity, led us to this moment where we don't have to. Yeah. And I think we can rejoice in that, one, by the ground that Christ, through them and their sacrifice, was able to take back the nations. Yeah. And to get us to a place where we're not under that kind of persecution. Sure. And I think then the charge for us is, now let's take it further. We've been benchmarked here. Let's keep going. Let's not lose ground and go back into where people kill us because we're Christians. Yeah, but I mean, I think that stuff lends to cycles. It does. Meaning, that conversation can kind of push into the world is actually getting better until he returns. But it's not. It's getting worse. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or, I mean, at the very least, it's the same. Sure. Yeah. But I think in some ways, there can be things that are better.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, let's rejoice in that.
Yeah, I
the
see
fact
what
that
you
it's
mean.
like, well, it's better than it was then, because
Yeah.
people don't knock on my door at night and kill me because I'm a Christian.
That's true.
So it's like, that is better.
But also there's a level to it where it's like the testing and perseverance is it's gradual depending on where you are.
Yeah.
So like in the instance
Yeah.
of like, it's not typically 0 to 100.
Mm.
Like it would be very unlikely, like you're saying, like we're blessed as Americans, like it would be very unlikely for you to be pulled out of your house right now.
Right.
And put in a situation where you would be martyred.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
in your hometown. And some of that's the freedom of our country and
Mhm.
and the things that are set in place. And that is a massive blessing.
Yeah.
But there are people that's currently happening to on the earth.
Correct.
And in those places, those people know that it could happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I forget the guy's name, but there's a missionary who specifically is called to Muslim nations.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And it's incredible the work that he's done. And he's written books about like basically accounting for the miraculous visions and dreams that Muslims have had. And one of the first, like they basically, so when this particular missionary, I forget his name, but he has books on this. If you look that concept up,
it's on
the
the tip of my tongue.
stories, yeah. But they tell the people, like when they come and they receive salvation, or they received it in a dream, and then they come and they want to know more, and they're in those Muslim countries.
Yeah.
He says, all right, first thing, you have to be willing to die.
Yeah.
Like right now, you have to be willing to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wild, like, it's a mind-bending.
And it's because that's a reality.
It is.
For where they're at.
Yeah, because that will be the thing. If they go back to their neighborhood and they don't worship Allah, then that's like they're going to be martyred.
Yeah. I mean, their significant other, a family member, a neighbor, they could be the ones to do it because of.
And even now, in a brutal way, it's weird that it's weird that that's consistent.
Yeah.
That like martyrdom, pretty consistently, that Christians have been brutalized.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just like a humane thing.
Right.
It's like there's something inhuman about those who have been martyred.
Yeah.
Versus other types of death.
Yeah. No, it's very true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a very specific situation.
Yeah, it's like there is so much hatred in the person that's going against the Christian.
Yeah.
That it ends up being brutal every time.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of us meant to go this deep on this.
Not for an opening. Welcome to Martyr's Row.
But here we are in Martyr's Row.
I feel like to kind of encapsulate that for the Western, specifically American audience.
I like that you said encapsulate.
I meant to say encapsulate.
Sorry, I was gonna try and pass, but I like that. That's not a word, but I like it better. Encapsulate.
It still kind of makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Everyone else would be like, don't
just
leave
let
that
him
alone.
Go. Let him go. No. Words matter.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. So I think of what it reminds me of in this conversation is we see the letters that Jesus writes or that they're written to the churches in Revelation, and one of them in particular, I believe it's Philadelphia.
Okay.
Where it talks about their faithfulness and the fact that they were faithful when there was no judgment yet.
Right.
That they will be rewarded greatly for when there is.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that's for us Western Americans specifically.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's where we're at. The fact that we don't have that hardship on us right now.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing holding us back from being faithful.
Right.
In the time when there isn't any condemnation.
Yeah.
And so if we are faithful in this time where it's good.
Yeah.
Then there will be greater things for us when it is hard.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing that's like, it's almost like, it feels silly to say that like in the time of peace, it's easy for us to get loose with
absolutely
our diligence towards holiness in order to see God.
Yeah.
to use that biblical language in that way. But yeah, so it's almost like in times of peace, you still have to strive for holiness and to move towards the Lord.
Yeah.
Because it's in times of peace or cultures of peace where other types of sin are accepted culturally.
Yeah.
Which historically also leads to the downfall of that civilization.
Yeah, that goes back to the cycles that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, everything's good, it's good, and then everybody's cool, and then other types of, like, Sodom and Gomorrah style debauchery.
Yeah.
And then, and any other, Nineveh and all the places.
Mm-hmm.
And then it devolves, and then somebody else comes in and destroys that civilization.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to martyrdom.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's that classic hard people create good times create soft people.
Yeah.
Soft people create hard times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all cycles. Just like this show.
That's
3,
right.
2, 1.
Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before, our faith heroes. On Martyr's Row, on Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before, our faith heroes. On Martyr's Row, on Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before. On Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before, our faith heroes. On Martyr's Row, on Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before, our faith heroes. On Martyr's Row, oh, 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 oh. On Martyr's Row, on Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before, our faith heroes. On Martyr's Row, on Martyr's Row, we look to those who came before, our faith heroes. On Martyr's Row, we don't forget those who have died. We don't forget those who have died. And long before we would arrive, long before we would arrive, we don't forget those who died. We don't forget those who died. Long before we would arrive. On Martyr's Row, oh, 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 Martyr's Row, oh, 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 Martyr's Row.
Well, the songwriting segment is just going to kind of evolve, right?
Yeah.
So we'll slide in and out of them.
It's going to keep changing.
If you wanted commentary on it, it was really just...
This is an invite for you to write your own commentary on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Should we explain a little bit? I feel like we should. Because we didn't in the songwriting segment. No,
Well, I mean, we still with the snap.
that's true. Okay, fine. You don't get to know.
You don't get to know.
However, I will say this: if you watch instead of listen, the process will reveal itself.
Yeah.
Let me be cryptic. You'll be able to see us find it.
Yeah, instead of just hear us find
Yeah,
it.
because if you're just listening, you're gonna be like, "What? They didn't set this up at all." And then but watch, and then you'll see us find it.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, I have a question for you tonight.
Okay, I'm ready.
You ready? This is the longest question we've asked.
It's such a bad drum roll.
I could get a drum. We had one last episode.
Yeah, that's true. 3, 2.
What if I was like,
and it's just a drum.
We have like every drum around us. We're just like in drums. I guess we could just that's too much editing. If you want to edit that in,
Can
you
someone
can.
VFX drums?
All right, I have this question written down because it's too long for me to remember.
Okay.
Are you ready? Listener, are you ready?
Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, Paul. If we don't have a supernatural worldview and everything is actually just as simple as it appears, then did we just make up these myths instead of retelling historical stories?
Here's what I love about that question is that's like as raw as our thoughts get. Like that's the just completely unedited how it came out of my brain or your brain since you wrote it.
Yeah, it's not it's funny. There wasn't really a way to refine it.
Yeah.
And also in the fashion of our show, the question is as complicated as the answer.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's a lot of little elements in there of that question.
Sure.
Like we talked about, we love words around here.
We do love words.
And there's a lot of words in there.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, even to start off, you just say supernatural. It's
Yeah.
like, okay.
Right. Unpack that.
What do we do with that word? And I think like in the most basic form, we can take it more granular if you want to.
Yeah.
Is like, well, are we saying that everything is naturalistic, meaning whatever we can see, feel, and touch, that is real?
Yeah.
And
5
everything,
senses.
yeah, it's like me doing this that affects this, and we can prove that it affects this because you can see it, you can experiment on it, you can repeat it.
Science.
Yeah, the science, Bill Nye.
Bill Nye, the science guy. Did he have a?
Or is it?
Cut
or
to next week. Next week's song.
It's just that head of his just spinning. We should actually do
Martyrs.
Using
that. Oh boy.
Or are there unseen supernatural divine things that affect the natural world that we can't see, feel, and touch? Sure.
Yeah, like I mean, echoes or shadows or something that is non-tangible to our 5 senses that can fully witness material things.
Yeah, I mean,
or material
with
space.
What you just said, I think this is a slight tangent.
Perfect.
But I think it's important to what we're talking about in the idea that, because I think in some ways it kind of shows that there is more than what we can see material-wise.
Yeah.
But because that's who we are, and especially that's how our brains work. Yeah. With our naturalistic worldview that we're ingrained with in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Or we've been trained in for our whole lives.
Yeah.
Is that when it comes to concepts like love or hate or like these very abstract things.
Yeah.
I mean, we can just even take love. It's like love. It's like, well, how do you define that?
Sure.
It's like, well, it's not really anything that you can hold on to.
Yeah.
But for us to understand it, we have to make it material.
Yeah.
We have to try to make it as tangible as we can.
So it becomes
I-
a thing or a person.
Yeah, and I think that's why the supernatural is so confusing to us, because it isn't something we can tangibly grab.
Right.
It's like understanding who God is. Like, well, I can't tangibly grab him, be like, this is him right here.
Yeah.
And so we have to invent ways to try to make him tangible.
Yeah. Yeah, and even Jesus uses parables in order to bring the reality of the kingdom of God into our material space.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in that same way, he gives expression that what he is saying is that it is like this, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not this, but it's like this.
Yeah.
And there
I
is
think
this
that's-
other
Yeah.
side to everything.
And I think that's the beauty of how God chooses to interact with us,
Right.
is he often doesn't, and this is very evident throughout Scripture
Yeah.
in the Hebrew mindset,
Sure.
is that God doesn't tell you why, he shows you how.
Yeah.
And because like in doing that, he makes it tangible through patterns and expression.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And
he shows that he loves us by doing this. He doesn't tell us why he loves us. He just shows that he does.
Yeah. Yeah, and even in thinking about that, it's funny, we've talked before about how all the miracles are different, and like how Jesus chooses to heal people, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things I was thinking about as you're saying that, it reminded me of that, which also reminds me of the seraphim in the throne room. That God is constantly revealing a new side of himself to the seraph.
Yeah.
And their response is to cry, holy, holy, holy.
Yeah.
That it's
Yeah.
a visceral response of these all directions seeing, many eye being creatures that are witnessing different sides to who God is
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
And it's like he is too infinite for us. And even saying too infinite, it's like he's infinite.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's not enough time to see or witness all of him.
Yeah.
And if that's true, then we can't complete our thought on who God is.
Yeah, absolutely.
We necessarily can never complete our thought on who God is.
Yeah, because it goes to the idea of anything that in any language, any
Yeah.
culture, or any experience that we give a word to, or we give a concept to,
Yeah.
that creates a boundary for somebody to live inside of. But God is beyond all of those boundaries. You think about like knowledge. It's like, well, he knows more than what is knowable,
Sure.
which doesn't make any sense.
No.
But it's like, oh, so he breaks beyond that boundary. He's not confined by what is knowable.
Yeah.
And he's not confined to the definition of a word that I can experience him by saying.
Yeah, and
He's greater than that, but this helps me understand a piece of him.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like hitting on even the Hebrew language. It's like there's so much in that that as you're talking about that, it's like language becomes the boundary that we encapsulate our understanding. Because
Yeah.
in some ways,
Yeah.
our understanding in our minds don't really have limits until we limit them.
Yeah.
So like it can be anything. And that's such a hard, it's
Mm.
almost like you have to teach people that. It's like, this actually can be anything that you want. That's why like, intro to humanities or philosophy classes in college, people get annoyed with them. And then people like us are like, oh, I love
This is awesome.
Yeah, like you walk into, philosophy and the professor is just sitting there and he goes, prove to me that you exist. And you're like, what?
Huh? I'm here.
Yeah, you're like, right here. Here I am.
I'm right here.
Yeah. And
Well,
then,
it's
and then
funny.
starts to break you out of the boundaries that were necessary
Yeah.
for you to navigate the material world you're in.
Yeah.
Not realizing in some ways that like there is more immaterial, or as much, probably more immaterial in the definition of what we would call material that we bump up against all the time in our world.
Yeah.
It's like we're confined
Yeah.
to this room, but this room contains much more than we can bump up against.
Absolutely.
It's
funny. It reminds me of one of my favorite questions, which is what makes a chair a chair?
I love
and it's
that.
like that's one of those questions where it's like, well, it's easy. It has 4 legs and you sit on it. It's like, so anything with 4 legs that I sit on is a chair. You're like, no, that's stupid. It's like, yeah, but so what is a chair?
Right, because
like,
that
what
would
makes
qualify
a
a
chair?
dog as a chair.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny.
And so it's funny because it reveals to us with how confident I am to identify what a chair is.
Mhm.
I can't tell you what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's a way for me to disqualify something with your qualifications.
Yeah.
This is why we love language so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Because in some ways it's our first boundary.
Mm.
You know, like it's the way we navigate the world, and it's also what confines us.
Yeah.
And it's the way that we get each other wrong all the time. It's the idea that like, you know, like
Encapsulate.
yeah. Yeah, encapsulate. It's the way that like, you know, a relationship with somebody is, like they say, surface deep
Yeah.
until it's not, because time's spent.
Hmm.
And when you spend time with somebody, you get below the surface to where
Yeah.
there are no boundaries in language.
Hmm.
And then you start to really know the person.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting idea,
Yeah.
because Jesus starts that way with us.
Hmm.
The way that Jesus starts with us is below the surface.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't
Yeah.
see what man sees, he sees what's in the heart. And the way
Yeah,
that
that's
we
true.
commune with him is not by seeing him face to face.
Hmm.
However, it's him resting upon us, around us,
Yeah.
us being aware with some of our senses, but more so maybe a sixth sense, the spirit
Uh-oh.
within us, being able to bear witness to the Spirit of God
Hmm.
that is outside of those tangible expressions, which is
Yeah.
why there's such an argument between science and religion.
Hmm.
Ironically, and maybe we should do that, but the scientific method is built off of the process of the Bible. Like
Hmm.
you can take the scientific method and use it in Genesis 1:1
Absolutely.
or
Yeah.
Genesis 1, and you kind of go through and you're like, oh, this actually proves out it's built off of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the, to like kind of finish that thought, is is when using the Hebrew language and expressing that,
Hmm.
when God has Adam name the animals,
Yeah.
there's an understanding there in the Hebrew language and in the Hebrew tradition that it's a continuation of creation, that God is inviting Adam into
Yeah.
the creating process, that he's showing him how he wants him to steward the earth
Yeah.
by giving him the opportunity to start to create the boundaries by which he
Mm.
lives. And the way
Yeah.
he creates boundaries is through word, because
Mm.
that's how God creates. God
true.
creates through words that designate boundary and creates order
Yeah.
and chaos,
Yeah.
which is why when language is confusing, that's kind of like the origin of everything,
Yeah.
is like
Yeah. That's true.
when we get languages confused, when we are confused between languages, then all of a sudden creation itself kind of breaks
Hmm.
down, and we don't know how to do anything.
Yeah.
It's like when you go
Yeah.
somewhere where they don't understand you and you don't understand them, that's the purest form of chaos.
Absolutely.
You're just looking at each other.
You know, it's funny when you say that, to give an anecdotal story to that.
Yeah.
Is there were 2 times when I felt completely helpless.
Only 2?
And, well, there's probably more than that, but in this example.
Okay. Okay.
It's definitely been more than that. But one in particular, I'll say. So I don't speak Spanish,
Same.
but I know some words, but not. I would not call myself a Spanish speaker by any means.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I get lost listening to Dora the Explorer.
How often are you doing that?
Not often.
Okay.
It's too confusing. It's too advanced.
That's
for
the
me.
only reason you don't watch that show.
That's the only reason. I can't find the map. Where is it? Swipe, no swiping.
That's already too much.
To tell you. You just don't know any boundaries.
Oh, man.
Well, so a couple of years ago, I was in Costa Rica,
Okay.
and
As one is.
I went there to go surfing.
As one does.
Waves are beautiful.
As they are.
Trying to think of what else I could switch up with.
Thank you.
And so when I got there, I was supposed to meet some friends there, but they ended up not being able to meet me at the airport. And so
Oof.
I had to, and they were the ones that, one of them was the Spanish speaker.
Oh, gosh.
And so I had to navigate to them in a car. I rented a car when I was there.
Okay.
And I forgot to bring cash.
Nice.
And so I thought I brought like my debit card, but I didn't.
So you had no...
I couldn't withdraw cash. All I had was one of my credit cards.
Ugh.
And I didn't tell my credit card company I was going.
No.
And so I had to get, I think it was like an 8-hour drive from the airport.
8 hours?
Yeah, it was a long drive
Jeez.
to the other end on one of the coasts.
Part of me wants to be like, is Costa Rica even 8 hours apart?
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know.
And well, part of it is because of because it's volcanic, so there's a lot of huge steep ups and downs.
Volcanic.
As it is.
As it would be.
As it would be, as one would expect.
Costa Rica, volcanic? Absolutely.
Of course. Well, so here I am in a country where I don't speak the language.
Sure. On a volcano.
On a volcano, an active volcano. It was currently erupting.
Yikes.
No. In a car, surrounded by people. It's like, I don't understand what everyone's doing. I don't have any money.
How did you get in the car?
Well, I had rented it previously.
Smart.
So I just had to go pick it up.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Mental note. Always do
it
that.
ahead of time.
Because you might end up having no money to get. Imagine that.
In between my drive, I had to take a ferry. And so I had to figure out, how do I do all of this?
How long of a walk is an 8-hour drive? Like 3
it
days,
depends on how many
probably,
miles
right?
it is, I guess.
What do you mean?
Because if you're driving really fast.
No, I feel like
cover
you
more
can still
miles.
calculate that.
Well, if you're doing like 20 miles per hour the whole time.
Well, no,
It's fewer miles for more time.
No, I understand that. I just...
It'd be a couple days walk.
Language. It's
well,
important.
so to what you're saying about chaos, and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's funny because in that moment in my head, I'm like, all right, don't look like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then I walk in somewhere and someone's like, speak Spanish, and I'm just like, please don't rob me. Because I clearly look like a confused tourist,
Yeah.
and I am.
Yeah.
Well, so it's funny because it's like, here's
And you're
this.
very European looking.
Yes, I don't look Hispanic.
You're like, this guy's not supposed to be here. If anyone is not supposed to be here...
If you're playing Spot the Difference, I'm the crimson
you're a
red.
shining beacon.
Yeah. I'm the first one everyone gets.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is that moment where it's like, oh, I'm not trying, but it's like I'm like trying to look confused.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to stay orderly, to use that language,
right.
in this moment. But I'm faced with such a separation that it's like I literally have no idea how to communicate with you.
Yeah, so there is chaos and you're trying not to make it worse.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
what's cool about it though is with how people are, and I think we can see kind of that call of us to take dominion and steward the earth,
Yeah.
to establish order, is we try to communicate with each other in the best way we can.
Yeah, so there's grace.
Yeah, which is really cool, I think.
Yeah, that is cool.
And so it's like figuring out a way, like, how do we create order in this situation with so much chaos?
Sure. Yeah. So if we don't have a supernatural worldview and everything is just as it seems, then are all these myths just stories? I remembered it.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I'm so proud. Well, so I think that's what's cool about it too, is with what we're saying is, so we're experiencing something.
Right.
And in the best way we can, we're trying to translate that and make that a tangible thing that we can communicate to somebody else.
Yeah.
We're trying to, how do we make this thing that I'm seeing, how do I organize it?
Yeah.
And communicate that to somebody?
Yeah.
And so I think we see that with myth. I think that's the question, is like, are people just making up stories that sound really cool?
Sure.
Or are they in the best way that they can trying to take what they're experiencing and communicate that to somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, we quite literally have multiple different ways of seeing this throughout the Bible. in the sense
Yeah.
that like, and I think maybe we don't consider it. You know, I want to say it's C.S. Lewis in conversation with Tolkien, basically calls the Bible the true myth, because in a lot of ways, like, there's parts of it where we would just say it's not myth. However, if you look at John's revelation, well,
Yeah.
John's revelation, if it's, you know, at that time it was written down, but if it had just been told and not actually written down until later,
Yeah.
then I think our relationship to it might potentially be different. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be, but it might be.
It might be.
And part of that is because it's that idea. It's like John, and that's the beauty of, like, you know, the mystery of God encapsulated into his word
Yeah.
is interesting. It's almost like God allows himself to be encapsulated in his word.
Yeah.
So the Bible that we have is the word of God organizing himself into this written text, into this boundary
Yeah.
that contains him but doesn't contain him.
Yeah.
That holds the mystery of who he is but doesn't reveal all of it.
Yeah.
Because it's only what is revealed is Jesus.
Yeah.
So the only part of the Father that's revealed in the Bible is actually Jesus.
Yeah.
And so you see these glimpses of it, and you kind of go through, and it's this containment, and there's all these stories and visions and these chaotic things where these people are witnessing literal heaven, and they're trying to organize their natural brains.
Yeah.
So they're in this supernatural experience, trying to organize their natural thoughts in order to translate it to other people who need to hear these things that they didn't experience, but are as real as the things that they are experiencing.
And I think it's telling where John in Revelation also has an angel with him to help him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he just saw the most wild stuff in the universe.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'm going to send you an angel too. He's going to help out.
Yeah.
You're going to need it.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the beauty of, like, that's a beautiful category of messengers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, quite literally what the angelos or the angels are doing is organizing language from supernatural to natural.
Yeah.
And I've never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, that's really good.
But in a major way, they're translators.
Yeah.
Like, they're taking the word of God and translating it to the hearer.
Yeah.
Because you
That's
don't really
that's
you
an
don't really
idea.
think about the sense that, like, so angels appear to people throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
And they're not all, like, Mary isn't necessarily speaking Hebrew. Like, she's in a Hellenized state.
Yeah.
Jesus most likely his common language was most likely Aramaic.
Yeah.
And you have Greek in real time. You have Hebrew in the synagogue. It's not, like, at that point, Hebrew is not a dead language. Like, they still speak Hebrew, a new version of Hebrew in Israel today.
Yeah, true.
So
even when you look at even in ancient Israel, it's like a lot of their language was a lot of Greek or Egyptian influence as well in their own language.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why wouldn't it be? Because that's who they were living with for so long.
Yeah, so, like, we don't actually know, other than the text is written in Hebrew, we don't know if the angel of the Lord appearing to Moses in the burning bush is speaking Hebrew.
Right.
May not be.
And most likely probably wasn't, because that wasn't Moses' native tongue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Moses didn't grow up with the Israelites.
He grew up in the palace.
Right.
Yeah.
And potentially knows both languages. So you see this idea that the messenger is also a translator.
Yeah.
It's got to be. So that's kind of cool, unless God does it for them, which, you know, that would be nice of him.
He can do it.
But probably created angels for the purpose of translating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a fascinating idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's speculation. That's not actually in. I don't even know if anybody's written. That might be in. It's got to be in some like medieval.
Someone has to have looked into it in some way.
Yeah, because medieval literature going into angels and demons and categories and stuff like that. It's.
But I do love asking these questions, and it's because it kind of makes it reality.
Sure.
It's easy to just look at it and be like, oh yeah, cool. But it's like no, let's actually think about that for a second. What language were they speaking?
Yeah.
How did they communicate with one another?
Yeah.
Because those are all very important to. I think one, placing them right in our brains and realizing these are real people.
Yeah.
And they had thoughts and worldviews that are different than ours.
Sure.
They were native to where they were at that time.
Yeah. Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah. That's such a... I didn't expect that.
You said yeah with a realization of like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell the people at home what Schrodinger's cat is?
Don't look in the box.
Don't look in the box.
Which is funny because that idea was him making fun of people.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's even better. That's what's so much better about it.
Yeah, true.
Where he has this idea that, okay, here's this cat. I might mess up explaining this.
Even better.
This is my myth. The Schrodinger myth. Where, okay, there's a cat in a box. Is it alive or dead? It's like, well, you won't know until you open the box.
Right.
So up until that point, both are true or neither are true.
Right.
And until you open the box, it reveals which one is true.
Yeah. And depending on how long you wait, one of them is most likely
more
going
likely
to be true. But it's that idea though. It translates also to language. It's like not until you actually put language to it does it. It's the same question of like if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound?
Yeah.
It's like if no one's there to witness it.
Is it a reality?
Yeah. Then does it, the chaos of it, does that translate into tangible materialism?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And there's even, I won't remember the word, but there's a German word for that. And it's that realization that everybody you see is living their own life with their own experiences and interactions with people completely separate than your own.
Everybody's their own main character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the strange realization of like the way I think about myself in the world is how everybody thinks about themselves in the world. And it has nothing to do with my influence.
I'm trying to think of the one German word I know.
There's a couple that I can think of, but they're not the
Baldungsroman? Baldungsroman. It means coming of age story.
Why do you know that?
Yeah, good question.
Well, okay, so I do have another question before we go too much further.
Okay.
Because we've said the word myth a few times.
We have.
And there's a connotation with that. But what...
Well, it's
what
in my
does,
question.
Yeah, what does myth mean?
Right. Yeah, and that's the other side to this. Because natural, supernatural. I think we've talked about it.
Well, I think it's funny because I think we talked about it in a very strange way. But for me, it's like, even just looking at language, I think reveals that there is more.
Yeah.
And I think at the very least, whether you agree with what the supernatural looks like,
yeah.
And again, it's like that's us putting language to a concept.
Sure.
Saying that, oh, it's Yahweh, and this is the heavenly host, and this is how the supernatural world interacts with our world, or what it looks like, what it is.
Yeah.
That's us trying to make something intangible tangible.
Right.
Through the boundary of language. But the fact that we have to do that, I think, shows that there is more.
True. Yeah, so actually...
So weird way to explain it.
Before we go to myth, though...
It's such a martyr's row way to
I
say
know.
it.
And that's why you come every week.
Right. Right.
The silence.
Dead air. That's where you guys comment. We gave you time.
Well, I'm trying to think of... I thought I had this passage pulled up. But one of the things that... I don't want to just read a passage and then be like, oh, this is not it.
Just pick one randomly.
Yeah.
Well, so I think with myth, what, at least for me, to set this up, is what I typically think about is we think of Greek mythology or Roman mythology. And it's kind of has this initial thought of made up.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's a fable. Like, it's just a story. But is that what that word actually means? And is it different than just, like, a fable?
So I don't want to get there yet.
Okay.
Because I'm trying.
ahead. I got too excited.
Yeah, okay. So Acts 17, verse 16, it says,
Okay.
Now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him. And some said, What does this babbler wish to say? Others said, He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him and brought him to I feel like you know that word.
Areopagus?
There you go.
That's a guess.
Saying, no, I think you're right. I just couldn't get it out. May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting, for you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean. Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So what we see right here is Paul in Athens, and as he's there, he's in the town square, and there's all these philosophers, and all they do all day is talk about new things.
Yeah.
And they say,
Yeah.
oh, here's this guy over here. He seems to be babbling, right? He seems to be saying something that we haven't heard before.
Yeah.
He seems to be saying all of these things, and it seems to be of foreign divinities. I love that language, because what we see here in this instance is this Hellenization, this moment where you have this philosophy like smashing into this ancient culture of everybody believes in divine beings.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the
Yeah.
Greek world comes in and philosophy smashes into it.
Yeah.
And they don't not believe in divine things, but it's the beginning of what would eventually be a non-supernatural worldview.
Yeah.
Because in this instance, you have this Greek culture that eventually evolves into philosophy as king, the conversation of thought and how to place natural things. Science evolves out of the Greek culture, Greek and Roman culture.
Yeah.
And we kind of, it's like that whole meme of like, how often do you think about Rome? Right. It's like that idea, because everything that's around
it's a pivotal
us.
moment.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's this changeover of this ancient culture where everything is spiritual
Yeah.
to this Greek culture where everything is thought-based. And it's happening in Acts 17, this juxtaposition of Paul walking in and going, all right, this is a foreign deity, but it's not, because all these gods that are here in this place, there's one, the unknown God, and that's the one true God.
Yeah.
So you worship what you do not know. I worship who I know, and who I know is the one true God that rules them all.
Yeah.
However, in the space that he's talking, it is a supernatural worldview at that point.
Yeah.
But it's the beginning of the naturalist worldview, which eventually evolves into philosophy and thought over spirituality and the integration of these things. And a lot of that has to do with the veil being torn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once the veil is torn, once the
It's true.
Spirit of God is poured out on the earth in Acts 2 and the day of Pentecost, all of a sudden you get this invasion of the Holy Spirit living and dwelling in Christians. So everywhere Christians go, the other spirits of the air are no longer able to move in the way that they've moved or influence in the way that they've influenced.
I mean, Scripture says it, so the nations will no longer be deceived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you see is this moment where all of this is happening. So Paul's on the other side of this, and he's interacting with basically the foundations of what our current society is built on.
Yeah.
Which is everything is thought-based. It's all natural. It's no longer supernatural. And so with Christians bringing peace to regions, you have this at the same time that Christians are living in and influencing, and because the Spirit of God is living within those Christians, the boundaries that we're crossing into where there are other spiritual entities, they don't have the power that they once had.
Yeah.
So they're not as present in the culture as they once were, unless there are people that are intentionally calling on them, which is still actively happening. And because of that Roman thought, that Greek thought translates then into essentially our worldview today. So like that would be my question, is like, how did we go from supernatural to natural? Because it seems like all of the Old Testament and everything leading up to really this day of Pentecost moment is a very supernatural worldview. Everybody seems to not have any problem with saying there are spiritual beings on the earth and functioning and moving, and like, you know, we realize that people are possessed by spirits. That's a very real thing to us.
Yeah.
But then it slowly, as Hellenization takes over and the foundation of Greek thought and philosophy, and then it builds into later as the church starts to evolve, and then the Catholic Church, all of a sudden Christianity is the religion of the Roman Empire. You go, all right, well that all shifted and changed all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you can see it in Acts 17.
That's true.
Where like you have those clashing of two things, and eventually not one wins out, but culturally the atmosphere shifts to we don't see any of these idols anymore. Now we just see stone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We don't see anything possessing them. We just see the stone. And so therefore we don't believe that anything's possessing them because it's not tangible anymore.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to reason out that truth. And so then that takes away, I think, the depths of what potentially myths are. You start to take away the supernatural element in worldview out of what, as we set up what myths are.
Yeah.
You start to take out that supernatural worldview, and if everything's naturalized, then anything supernatural mentioned in a story is necessarily not true or fiction or feels that way.
Yeah, you remove the reality of what the thing is talking about.
Yeah, and the worldview in which it was originally spoken.
Yeah, that's true.
So like if you remove
that's true.
If you remove a story from its context, then you don't actually know what the story's trying to tell you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that just taking scripture with the parables.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many of those that are lost on us. I mean, an easy one to go to is like the prodigal son.
Yeah.
There's so many elements in that are totally lost on us.
Right.
Because I don't know that culture.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not in that culture.
Yeah.
So like it's still a cool story, but it's like, yeah.
Cool.
And then it's like, oh, when I actually understand, like, why is it significant that the father runs to his son?
Sure.
It's like, well, that alone is like, oh, whoa, this is actually really powerful now.
Yeah. Yeah, understanding that. And that's a lot of the reason why I think it's easy, and we've talked about this, but why it's easy for us way on the other side of that, post-enlightenment, post-everything, post-modernity, to jump in and kind of go like, yeah, the Bible is myth and there's no reason to believe it.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, well, hang on. Myth is not necessarily untrue.
Yeah.
Because myth has supernatural elements in it, it doesn't mean that the stories are false.
Yeah.
Or fiction.
Yeah.
It just means that they have supernatural elements in them. But so does our life right now.
Yes.
So then is myth fiction?
That was a great setup.
Thanks.
I like that. That was really good. And so basically what the question is that you're putting forward is, do we think about it the way we think about it now because we're so removed from that worldview?
Sure.
Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. Like, do we ignorantly assume things mean certain things from past stories and mythologies do we just discount them as reality, any part of them as reality, because we have no box or boundary or placement for supernatural elements to these stories.
Yeah.
So then do we even take, we talked about this on a previous episode, but we take things like the Bible and you see pastors throwing out large parts of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Or the whole thing altogether because there's supernatural pieces in there that don't fit into our naturalistic worldview.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem.
It is a problem.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that the Bible is not a myth in the true sense of the word myth. It just means that it's a true myth.
Yeah.
And we have to be transformed by the word itself, not forcing our worldview and for it to fit into our framework.
Yeah.
We have to fit into its framework.
Yeah, and so tying that into even the way we open this with talking about language and the boundaries of words and understanding, I think it reveals our arrogance in the same way it reveals every generation's arrogance.
Sure.
Even from the time of Rome.
Yeah.
Or before that. And it's the thought that we're smarter and better than everyone before us.
We're not?
We like to think so.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's like, and I think that's the funny thing about it. In a lot of ways, like, oh yeah, we are. Because there's an understanding that we have that's different from theirs.
We could be.
There's language that, in the sense of like, there's language that we have in the way we understand the world that's different from them. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Not that it's better, it's different. And it's like the way we explain and understand the world that we live in is different.
Yeah.
I mean, we can even, I think it's because we compare to like, even like early 1800s or 1700s, where it's like, yeah, the doctors didn't wash their hands.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, and we look and it's like, that's barbaric.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, because we know better now.
Right.
But we take that same approach and apply it to everyone previously.
Yeah.
And I think that's where our arrogance starts to show, in that everyone was so stupid back then. They didn't get it.
Yeah.
They didn't figure it out. So they looked up at the sun and they thought it was a god. But I look at it and it's like, it's a ball of gas.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but what are they trying to say? And
Yeah.
I think that's where the boundary of language is important. And in a lot of ways, yes, they didn't know that's what it was. Most likely. But maybe. I know, let me to say what I'm saying. I'll say this first. And it's like let's go with the thought that they didn't know. And
Okay.
it's like they really did think that, but it's like, but does it discount what they're trying to say? And I think that's the part where we get tripped up. When it's like, well, what are they trying to explain? What are they trying to tell us through this myth, through this language barrier that we have with them?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the other important thing to look at, like we talked about with looking at the languages those people spoke. Like the Greek mythology wasn't written in English.
Right. Yeah.
It was written in Greek, and we read it in English.
Right.
Which means a translator had to make a choice based on what made the most sense to try to explain this word that doesn't exist in our language.
Yes.
Or this concept that doesn't exist.
I mean, perfect. And this is why I was like, because it is our arrogance.
It is, yeah.
The perfect example of that is it Job 38, 28?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, we read it sun, moon, stars, but it says Ben Elohim.
Yeah.
So is that sun, moon, and stars?
And technically,
they were trying
yes.
They were trying to tell us.
And how how we translate those words and those concepts, or how they use them even prophetically.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, that is what that means, but that's not what it means.
But it's also parable language.
Yeah.
It's also
exactly
simile, metaphor. It's the language of going, you don't fully understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But let me hearken back, even in Job, which arguably is written before Genesis. Let me go back and go, okay, but in Genesis it says that God placed the stars in the sky as signs to us. And you go, okay, well, wait. So we read everything when it says star. We read it all as balls of gas,
Yeah.
dying planets,
Mm-hmm.
or depending on what it is. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
that's how we read it. It's like, oh, that's just material things. Is it?
And it's like, well, it depends on how they're using it.
And the thing is they're actually not saying dying planet
Right.
or ball of gas. They're saying spiritual created being.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in the sense of Job, or we see that even in Revelation where it uses that same language.
Yeah.
And it's like when it talks about a mountain, it's like, oh yeah, and the mountains over here, it's like it's not talking about a mountain.
No. That's how it was translated.
That's how it was translated.
Yeah.
And even it's like even using their language, that's the concept.
Why didn't the angels translate the Bible?
And I think that's one of the cool things, and I think that's where we can get tripped up sometimes in even how we defend the Bible.
Sure.
And this is a Michael Heiser thing, and I love the way he says this.
Yeah.
Even though it ruffle a lot of feathers.
Yeah.
But it's just like, why can't we just let the Bible be the Bible? Just let it be what it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't have to be more than what it is.
Which is ironic
Yeah.
because that's what the other argument is.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's arguing from a supernatural worldview.
Mm-hmm. Well, even in the way of like, they're explaining things in the way they understand things.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's not better than ours. It doesn't mean that it is better than ours.
Yeah.
But they're explaining the world in the way they understand it.
Yeah.
And God's not going to just download like, oh yes, pi r squared and blah, 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 and
Yeah.
like, and they don't know that.
Yeah.
And we see that in the Gospels. It's like each writer writes from their knowledge.
Yes.
Luke writes in a way more medical form because he's a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Matthew doesn't do that because
Right.
he's not.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, yeah, people are explaining in writing in how they understand things
Yeah.
and not how we'll understand things. Because in the funny way of it all, 1,000 years from now, 100 years from now, maybe even 50 years from now,
Yeah.
we're going to be making fun of, they're going to be making fun of us.
Yeah. It's the whole thing of like, what are we getting wrong now
Yeah.
that is going to be super obvious to them?
Yeah.
Like, why in the world were they like, why did everyone smoke cigarettes?
That
Like-
wasn't even that long ago.
Like without filters.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
just
even when you have doctors saying, oh, cigarettes are actually healthy because they
Right.
get rid of your morning cough.
yeah,
And we look at them and it's like, are you stupid?
your morning cough.
That was actually a whole thing.
I know.
Yeah. When it's funny, it's like, oh, well, it seems ridiculous now, but to them at that time, it made sense.
Yeah.
Because it did.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
And that's like that naturalist thing.
Exactly.
It's like you don't know what you don't know. And that it is arrogance is the right word because the truth is like we're not sympathetic to the writer telling their story.
Yeah.
It would be like somebody's just trying to explain to you that they just need a little bit of help.
Mm.
And our arrogance says, no, I'm going to help them how I want to help them. But they don't need that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's true.
It's like America going over to other countries and going, well, the best thing for you is to be like America.
you should
not
give us your
true.
oil. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I had to say it.
Yeah. We're going to oppress you by making you like America. But they don't need to be like America. They
Right.
need to be like them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we do that all the time and that's why it's tough when you go back and like using the Michael Heiser quote. It's like even going back and if you're translating scripture, it's like please don't translate it from the perspective of now,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then you're just writing your own Bible,
Yeah.
and that's so scary.
I mean, on a more recent and more sensitive topic of explaining this is like the book Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Okay.
When it's like, when we read that, it's like, oh, this is horribly offensive.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was actually very progressive.
Sure.
And it's like, oh, this is actually like at that time, it's like, this is a good thing that's happening.
Yeah.
But we read it now, separated from that at that time, and we're like, this is a terrible book.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're reading it from our understanding now and not from what it did and what it meant then.
Yeah. Yeah. So, myth.
Yeah.
So myth is interesting because if you look up just like straight up Google what is myth,
Give me that Googs def.
myth definition, dictionary, definitions from Oxford Languages.
Come on.
Learn more. Uh, so the first one, and these are both noun usages. The first one says a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people, or explaining some natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving supernatural beings or events. Example, ancient Celtic myths.
Ooh.
So there's a lot there. I mean, a traditional
is.
story, so a story of tradition that's told and passed down from generation to generation, especially one concerning the early history of a people. So we see that there are traditional oral traditions or even written traditions that are maintaining the history of, I mean, we see that with our history books.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's explaining the origins of our people or explaining some natural and it adds all of these, which is interesting, some natural or social phenomenon.
Yeah.
So specific
Yeah.
instances that are notable, and then typically involving supernatural beings or events. So that's interesting because
Yeah.
it's explaining some natural history, some special moments,
Yeah.
and it typically involves supernatural beings or events. So a myth
Yeah.
is a story that is of an origin of the people that is passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And it has natural things in it. It has special events in it.
Yeah.
And it typically involves supernatural beings.
Yeah.
That's a really wide span of things.
It's a really big, and so it's like when I hear that, it's like what I hear is it's a traditional method of telling fantastic stories.
Yeah,
and
if that doesn't
fantastic
explain
in
what
the
the Bible
definition of
is,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like how do I add tangibility to this thing that is supernatural? That's fantastic.
yes, yeah, yeah. And then the second one is a widely held but false belief or idea. And that one's one sentence.
But I think what's interesting about that, hearkening back to previous episodes, false doesn't mean fake.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, but the definition does mean fake.
But the definition does.
Yeah, because it's misconception or fallacy would be synonyms.
Yeah, it sure would. But it's just fun to throw that
You're
out.
right, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is basically it's a story of tradition. About early history, natural things that happened, unique things that happened, and typically involving supernatural beings or events.
Yeah.
Just kind of throws that in on the end.
It's just boop.
And then the second one is a widely held false belief.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we have a problem with myths in a lot of ways.
Because, I mean, the second one is, for most people, the primary definition.
Yeah, if you say the Bible is a myth, people are like, what?
They get mad.
You can't say that.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? It's a traditional story passed down from generation to generation that speaks of actual natural things that happened and phenomenon, events involving supernatural beings.
Yeah.
And events.
Kind of fits the definition.
Yeah, it does. So it makes sense that C.S. Lewis would call it, the true myth.
Yeah.
Or the truest myth.
Yeah. And I think saying it truest, I think is, and I'll make an argument for this later if we have time. I think that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I think truest is a very important qualifier.
Okay.
Um,
Do you want to make the argument now?
yeah, let's do
Okay.
it. Well, so we're kind of headed there, and what comes to my mind then when we think of myth
Yeah.
is, okay, so that means every culture, if it's a widely held but false story,
Mm.
is that the way it said it?
The second one?
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah.
Belief.
A widely held
Yeah.
but false story.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, let's take that idea. And so that would seem to say that would you agree to the court?
Well, it's fairy tale. Like it's
Yeah,
that,
so it's like, okay, so if that exists and we see that happening in every culture,
right.
then we would expect different stories across all cultures. We would expect their own unique tales.
I see where you're going with this.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah, and that's true because like
Yeah.
like widely held means that what we see in the second definition is things like fairy tales where it's exactly the same story.
Yeah.
Quite literally exactly the same story, just names changed
Mm-hmm.
in all cultures
Yeah.
or many cultures.
Yeah.
You think of like Hansel and Gretel.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Those fairy tales. Yeah.
Right, the fairy tales. It's like those myths or those fairy tales
Mm.
are stories that didn't actually happen because they were written as fables,
Yeah.
fairy tales, with the intent of teaching a lesson.
Yeah. And I think when we look at those specifically, we do see differences where it's like, oh, those are unique stories
Mm-hmm.
to teach a specific moral lesson.
Right.
And we see Aesop fables; those are very popular. We see Brothers Grimm
Yeah.
and their fairy tales. I mean, we see it across Asian cultures and all throughout the world.
And maybe that's the distinction and qualifier is intent.
I think intent's very important.
So
Yeah.
the difference between, because that's the difficulty, is like when we say myth and you make it synonymous with fairy tale,
Yeah,
the qualifier is intent.
I think that's huge. Yeah, because with a fairy tale, the intent is to teach a lesson, but the intent of a myth is to tell history.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's to tell history in a way that makes things in interactions with supernatural beings naturalized in a way that we can comprehend.
yeah, yeah.
So it's expressing phenomenon in history that's part
that's
of our
true.
origin.
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, so the intent is to maintain tradition and history, which, is not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily make it true.
yeah,
I just think it's incorrect to the definition of myth to say that it's all necessarily false,
yeah,
because that's
Yeah.
true of fairy tales
mm-hmm.
and fables.
And they never claim to be true.
No, that's not their intent.
I mean, and they go so far as to intentionally use, like, talking animals, like the tortoise and the hare.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like with the intent of like, this is made up.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to draw an image to take you out of reality, to teach you a realistic lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, but then a myth, you see traditions, and that is the interesting thing that you just brought up, is that like with myths, what you see is origin stories and history of other cultures.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this to you, and I wish I could remember who quoted it, but basically the idea was that myths, I heard somebody say this, and I hope I get this right, but it's like myths are the memories of cultures.
I like that.
So it's like the myth is the
Yeah.
memory of the culture itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is an interesting way to put that. It's like, okay, so then the myth is how a culture itself remembers its origin.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
It does make sense.
It's a lot like, it reminds me of the Wesleyan tradition of taking bar melodies or Irish
yeah.
melodies and putting theology to those melodies
Yeah.
so that you remember the gospel.
Yeah.
Well, how are you remembering the gospel? You're remembering it
Through a
by
familiar tune.
yeah,
Yeah.
through a familiar tune. So it's that idea of like a myth is the familiar tune. It's the one that you hear over and
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about myths is that if you look into myths, it seems like you hear the same thing over and over and over again from culture to culture.
So happy you said that.
Do you have examples, Paul?
You know what? It's funny you ask. I do have some examples. So I spent some time on this idea. One, because I find it just fascinating.
Yeah.
And specifically, I focused on 4 key points in history, early history,
Okay.
as far as what we see biblically.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, do we see these same things translate to other cultures?
Yeah.
And so the first one, I think it's easy to jump to, is creation.
Well, so because we've talked about this a lot,
Yeah.
because it's that idea of like, okay, the Bible says it. There are things in the Bible. There are stories, and you kind of go like, is this a fable or is it myth?
Yeah.
Is it a fable or is it tradition and factual?
Yeah.
Is it actually the memory of our culture? Is it the memory of our history?
Yeah.
Right? And so then the cool thing about it is then you look across other cultures, which is what we're going to do briefly, and you go, what are their myths?
Yeah.
And what are their memories of their origins?
Yeah, because when we look at it that way, it's like, well, let's look at the claim that Genesis puts out in creation.
Yeah.
Is that Eve was the mother of all living things.
Sure.
It's like, okay, so that means from these 2 people,
Yeah.
all living things came,
Yeah.
as far as humans.
Right.
So we should see that origin point as far as if they're the ones that are the gatekeepers of telling everyone what happened in creation.
Yeah.
Well, then everyone should have that.
Do we potentially see that other places?
Yeah. Do we see that spreading out?
Yeah.
And funny enough, funny I should say that.
Do we?
And I don't know how much more time we have, so I'm gonna go through it.
Yeah, this
quickly.
almost feels like a part 2.
It kind of does. And so what I'm gonna do is kind of brush through some of this.
Maybe we should do it as a part 2.
Do you want to?
I feel like we need to.
Because we could spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah, this was like, we should.
So here's what I'll say to set it up.
Okay.
And because I want to tie back into, I want to tie
The
back
legal
into.
Wait, do that one more time.
Oh yeah. You're welcome.
Even if you're watching, you didn't see that.
That was only audio.
Yeah.
We saw it.
Yeah, that was for you, audio listeners.
So we're gonna tell the myth of dropping of the legal pad.
No.
But
yes.
so here's what I'll say to kind of tie this together. Can I say the 4 points in history that I pulled up, or should I save those?
No, you can tell them.
Okay.
And then we'll unpack.
I'll give you the parent categories.
Yeah, because this is one of those things where, really, it's like us to kind of break down and go, all right, let's feel out the boundaries.
Yeah.
Let's look at the language. Let's put all these pieces together. But I think in the next episode, it would be good for us to actually dig into these things.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I also have some speculation stuff I want to jump into.
I love it. Okay, well, I'll make this brief then.
So this is the setup episode.
And the four points that I see in here that I focused on personally was creation, the flood, the knowledge bringers, and the Tower of Babel. The creating of different languages in villages or tribes and nations.
Okay.
Do we see that spreading out occur? Because these are 4 significant events that we see in Scripture. And it's like, if it's the truest myth, we should see those same points. And spoiler alert, we do. And so, what I think is interesting about that is because there are differences, but there's a lot of vital points that are the same.
Yeah.
And why is that significant? I think it's significant because of Babel.
Yes.
Because what happened at Babel? It's like, well, language was created.
Yeah.
And not just like there was universal language and then it split. The language was confused.
Yeah.
God confused speech.
Mm-hmm.
And that forced people to think about the world in a different boundary than they had before.
Yes.
And because we see that with all languages, it's like we've talked about this pretty much at length
Yeah.
of how different languages describe things differently. They create different boundaries
Yeah.
that don't translate perfectly.
Right.
So I think it's natural to see these differences in these myths
Yeah.
because the languages have changed, the worldviews changed, the experiences have changed, where they're moving to, all of it changes.
Yeah.
And so it's significant that we see so many vital points in history that line up within myth,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also significant that we see the differences because of cultural boundaries that have been created.
Yeah, and all
But-
of those pieces
Yeah,
have options for us to be able to see tangible events through history, through other cultural
yeah,
stories.
yeah. And then so
If it is the truest myth.
that's my argument,
Yeah.
is the language.
Yeah.
And so this is my hypothesis.
Okay.
This is a Paul hypothesis.
And this is a setup for the next episode.
Yes. Is that that original language,
Yeah.
that continued through one group of people who scripture was passed down through, and they were the ones that held on to that original story in that original language.
Ooh, I like that.
And so what makes the Bible the truest myth? Because it held to the original boundary in which it was experienced. That's my hypothesis.
So show up to the next episode. Get ready. 3, 2, 1.